Hey, welcome to Journey Through Scripture. Hope that your week has gone good. You've made it to Thursday. Only one more day is Friday, and then the weekend. So it's gonna be a good weekend. I hope that you enjoy our time together today. My name is Philip Thomas, pastor of Journey here in Elgin, Texas. So we are now introducing a new character. We are introducing Joseph. We are in Genesis chapter 37. We're going to be reading 37 to 41. I encourage you, again, to read these because I'm not going to go in detail in all of the things that you'll read about. There's some really cool stuff. I kind of hit the high points, so I just encourage you. Make sure that you, when you have time to go and read Genesis 37 through 41. So if you remember, last time we ended, Isaac has now passed away. So remember, we have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Isaac and Abraham have both passed away now. Jacob has 12 sons. This is where things really start to move to form this nation of people. There's 12 sons. These are going to be the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph is one of those sons. He's not the youngest, but right above Benjamin. Joseph, we're introduced to him, and he is his father's favorite. He was the first son of Rachel. If you remember going back to Jacob, Jacob loved Rachel, but then was swindled by Laban to marry Leah, and then Rachel, and then there was problems, so he also had children with their servants as well. So just a convoluted mess. But it's making this wonderful family of God, right? But Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin, and those are Jacob's favorites, and it's obvious, right? So Joseph is given this nice coat of many colors, right? So it's a nice coat that his father gives him. Joseph being younger at this time, so again, sometimes I can remember, lessons and stuff saying, oh, Joseph was really kind of a brat and was arrogant and all of these things, and he kind of was, but he was also at that age where most people are kind of arrogant, a little bit egotistical, right? And just imagine, he's the one that's given the nice coat. He's even, at that point, he even has a vision from God that, by the way, turns out to come true. But when he tells his brothers, they don't appreciate it to him because what it tells them is that one day they're going to bow down to him. And so I can imagine my middle school brother saying, coming to me and saying, hey, God just told me that you're going to bow down to me one of these days. Right? That doesn't go over well. So you have Joseph's brothers, they're out tending the flocks. And Joseph is going out to take them some food and things like that. Well, they see him coming, and they say, what brother hasn't plotted to kill their brother? So they say, hey, here's Joseph. This is a perfect time. We can get rid of him. We don't have to see that stupid coat anymore, and we don't have to hear about any stupid dreams that he has. And so they're planning on killing him. Actually, Reuben says, no, let's not kill him. Let's just put him in a pit for a while, and then we'll figure out what to do with him. So they do that. They put him in a pit. Reuben's plan is he's actually going to go let Joseph go, but before he can, they sell Joseph into slavery. So he gets sold to a group of travelers who are headed to Egypt. So Joseph's brothers sell him into slavery. Not a good start, right? So Joseph, it's important to kind of get this big picture because the story of Joseph is really important for us to understand, again, God, how he interacts, how God works. Joseph started off, everything's going well. He's the favorite son of Jacob, who is now called Israel, who is one of the main patriarchs of the covenant line of God. He's going to have an important role in that. Now he's sold into slavery, going to Egypt. You can imagine what he must be going through. It's like, God, why is this happening? How in the world could you allow this to happen? Not only how could you allow this to happen? How could you allow it to be done by my brothers? People who should be my protectors are the ones who betrayed me. So Joseph finds himself sold into slavery. Now, I do want to hit on chapter 38. This is just, again, it's so important. And this is rare that the Bible is so, it's easy to say, yeah, the Bible's true. But one of the ways that affirms that is that the Bible constantly tells things that are unflattering towards the heroes of the faith, right? You may remember, if you look in talking about Jesus and the line of Jesus, that he came from the tribe of Judah, right? That David, King David, came from the tribe of Judah. So that obviously Judah is one of Joseph's brothers. Judah has this interaction in chapter 38 that's kind of problematic, right? He talks about his family, and he has children, and one of his sons dies, and so now the daughter, the wife of his son, is on her own, Tamar, and there's all this interaction that goes on, and Judah gets drunk again, is seduced by Tamar, because Tamar wants to make sure she's going to be taken care of. So she's seduced and seduces Judah. He sleeps with her, thinking that she's a harlot, right? She kind of takes his part of his robe and stuff so that she can prove. Well, she gets pregnant. Judah's like, oh, she needs to be put to death. And then she says, yeah, but the baby's yours. And so then he does bring her in, and he takes care of her. But it's an ugly situation, right? Because these are flawed people. But God still chooses to work through this flawed group of people. So we get to chapter 39, and we see Joseph as a slave in Egypt. He ends up being a house slave, if you will, to Potiphar. And he is so good at what he does that Potiphar puts him in charge of his whole estate. Now this is so important. Joseph has had the worst luck and could probably feel like he has been discriminated against and is experiencing injustice and unfairness, and he has. But what does he do? He decides, you know what, I'm going to do the best I can in the circumstances I'm in. That I'm going to do what is right, even though my circumstances are wrong, even though I haven't received a fair shake. It could have been easy for him to say, you know what, this God that my dad told me about, and this God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, well, where is he for me, right? I'm in slavery in Egypt. I'm just going to do whatever I want. No, he actually chose to continue to be faithful to God. And he was rewarded for it. He was a hard worker. So he all of a sudden finds himself the head of Potiphar's household. Well, Potiphar's wife finds a liking to Joseph. Joseph is the first recorded pool boy in history, right? The lonely housewife who decides to have an affair with the pool boy. And that's who Joseph is. And Potiphar's wife wants to have an affair with him. But Joseph is not going to give in to that. That would have been the easy thing to do. And guess what? He would have been able to get away with it. But he rejects Potiphar's wife, and then Potiphar's wife probably wasn't too used to getting rejected, especially from a slave, decides that she's going to throw himself at Joseph and do it in order to get him in trouble. And so she kind of starts going after Joseph. He runs away, leaving his cloak behind. But he's like, no, I'm not getting involved in this. Well, then she, of course, tells Potiphar that Joseph had tried to come onto her and all of this stuff. And so now Joseph is not in high graces of Potiphar and gets thrown into prison. So Joseph, in one of the 12 sons of Jacob, in line with God's covenant, thrown in a pit by his brothers, sold into slavery in Egypt, is a house slave, does as well as he possibly can, is lied about, even though he's doing the right thing, the consequence and the reward for doing the right thing is now he's in prison in Egypt. So the one step below being a slave in Egypt is being imprisoned in Egypt. So he finds himself in prison. Again, what does he do? Does he sulk? Does he turn his back on God? No, he's the model prisoner. And he actually gets some freedoms because of that. He's given a task to do in prison. So he's just going about. There's no reason to think he's ever going to get out. But he's choosing to do the right thing even in bad and unfair and unjust circumstances. We have a couple of dreams that some different prisoners have. There's a baker that's part of a royal baker that is close to Pharaoh of Egypt, as well as kind of a food taster. They both have dreams. God has given Joseph the ability to interpret those dreams. He does. They both come true. The baker, unfortunately, his dream wasn't as pleasant, and he gets hung, which Joseph, unfortunately, talk about rough job. Hey, can you tell me what this dream is? Yeah, you're about to be hung. But comes true. Well, there was also the chief butler, and Joseph just asked him, please remember me. Right? Because he's like, hey, I've done something good for someone who's really close to Pharaoh, who has some importance. So, hey, remember me. Maybe I can get out of here and become a house slave again. But he doesn't. So he stays in prison for 2 more years. Right? It's vital for us to understand. We read these stories, and it takes us 20 minutes to read through. This is years that Joseph has now been in slavery, been in prison, and he's just trying to do the right thing. Years of his life have been taken away through this injustice. But Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, if you will, has a couple of dreams, and he's very disturbed by them. He calls his interpreters, and they can't figure it out. And then his butler, his food taster, says, you know what? I remember this guy in prison. Maybe he's still there. He told me my dream, and it came true. And so Pharaoh calls Joseph, and Joseph interprets the dream. And what the dream basically means is that for the next 7 years, things are going to be really well. There's going to be plenty of rain. The harvests are going to be good, but that's going to be followed by 7 years of famine. That's going to be very bad and is going to affect the whole land. And Pharaoh's response to that, Pharaoh can see not only does this guy know how to interpret dreams, there's something about him, right? And so Pharaoh invites Joseph into his household and then ends up putting him in charge of making preparations for this famine. That's really incredible when you think about it, that Pharaoh believed Joseph enough that he was going to put him in charge for something they weren't going to know if that dream was going to come true for another 7 years. Right? But Pharaoh gave that to Joseph, and then so Joseph starts applying his work ethic, his desire to serve God and to do good, no matter what his circumstances are, and he starts preparing for the 7 years of famine that are to come. And I just want to close. We'll be closing there in chapter 41. I encourage you to read all of that. But that is such an important truth that we learn from Joseph, is that you can be faithful to God, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to experience unfairness and injustice in your life. It doesn't mean you're going to be spared slavery and false imprisonment and people lying about you. Right? That, unfortunately, is part of living in this fallen world. But you can choose how you respond to that. And Joseph did. He did what he could, which was take care of himself in the way that he responded to his circumstances. It's vital for us to understand that and know that God was with Joseph when he was in the pit, when he was in slavery, when he was in prison, and God was with him whenever he was elevated to a position of prominence. That God was with him every step of the way, and Joseph chose to rely on him and to live in response to him no matter what his circumstances may be. Next week, next Tuesday, we're going to continue. I encourage you to read chapters 42 through 45, and we will see how this family situation ends up having an unexpected reunion, and it's pretty neat to see. So I hope that we'll see you next Tuesday. Again, read Genesis chapter 42 through 45. We'll see you on Tuesday.